My husband dumped me and sent me a text saying, "You'll never make it on your own, you're just a waitress." He had no idea I was secretly studying finance at night. 2 years later, I bought out his struggling restaurant and said, "Your new boss will see you now." What happened next shattered his ego. My name's Callie, and for 6 years, I was married to Trent Whitmore. If you're from around Asheville, you've probably heard of him. He opened the Hawthorne Grill a few years back, a sleek, expensive-looking restaurant with Edison bulbs and charcuterie boards, built for Instagram more than food. He liked being a big fish in a small pond. We met at a friend's engagement party in Black Mountain. I was waitressing at the time, working doubles at a cafe off Tunnel Road. He charmed me with wine talk and stories about curated culinary experiences. At first, I thought he was brilliant. Driven. Passionate. What I didn't realize was, he wasn't building something, he was performing. He was charismatic in public and cold behind closed doors. You wouldn't believe how different someone can be once the restaurant closes and the lights go out. To the world, he was the guy who opened his own place before 30. To me, he was the man who sighed every time I mentioned wanting to go back to school. Who told me things like, "Some people are workers, some people are owners, Callie. You're just not built for that kind of pressure." I kept things together longer than I should have. I told myself his stress was temporary. That he'd come around. That once the business took off, he'd go back to the man I fell in love with. He didn't. He came home later and later. He got drunk more often. And he started locking his phone. I noticed a different cologne on his shirts. Lipstick stains on receipts in the car. Excuses so flimsy they weren't even worth arguing over. But I didn't explode. I didn't cry in front of him. Because by then, I was already planning something quietly, in the shadows of our failing marriage. For almost a year, I had been taking online finance classes through UNC Charlotte. Late at night, after he passed out on the couch with a half-empty wine glass and reruns of Chef's Table humming on Netflix, I studied. I logged in from the bathroom during my breaks at the diner. I took notes while stirring soup. Nobody knew. Especially not him. That was my secret lifeline. The night he left me, I had just finished a brutal shift at Maple and Iron, a place that smelled permanently like burnt toast and dish soap. I came home, dropped my shoes by the door, and saw it right there on my phone screen. "You'll never make it on your own, you're just a waitress. I'm done." That was it. No explanation. No fight. Just a single sentence. And he was gone. He had already packed his things. He left the keys on the counter. I remember standing in the living room barefoot, blinking like I had just stepped off a roller coaster. I laughed at first, this weird, cracked laugh that sounded like it came from someone else. Then I cried. Not because I wanted him back, but because of the sheer disrespect of it. The finality. Like I hadn't given him everything. Like I hadn't sacrificed years for him. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat on the floor in front of my laptop and applied to 5 more finance certification programs. Something shifted in me. Something sharp and electric. I moved out 2 weeks later. Packed up what little I had and rented a garage apartment from a retired couple in West Asheville. They were sweet people. Left tomatoes from their garden on my doorstep every Sunday. I didn't tell them what I was going through. I just smiled and thanked them. My days were spent slinging hash browns and scrubbing tables. My nights were spreadsheets, Zoom classes, late-night tutoring sessions, and learning how to flip a business from the inside out. I worked like I was racing something, maybe shame, maybe rage, maybe both. Some nights I would search Trent's name on Yelp, just to see how things were going. The reviews were not great. The owner was rude. Overpriced for what you get. Food was okay. Service was better when the waitress ran the place. That one made me smile. I found out from mutual friends that the Hawthorne Grill was hemorrhaging money. Staff turnover was ridiculous. The chef, Pascal, had left after a screaming match in the kitchen. I wasn't surprised. Pascal was the soul of that place, and Trent treated him like a cog. It all would have made a great soap opera if I wasn't so focused on building a whole new life. A year and a half after he left, I had enough certifications and client work to leave the diner. I joined a small financial consulting firm that specialized in turnarounds for failing businesses. I worked under a woman named Teresa, a legend in the Asheville small business scene. She taught me how to assess risks, cut bloat, and restructure debt like it was origami. One day in a strategy meeting, a property came up. A restaurant in downtown Asheville, still standing but barely breathing. The numbers were ugly. The owner had overleveraged himself on unnecessary renovations, and now payroll was bouncing. It was the Hawthorne Grill. I didn't say a word. I just listened. A week later, I put in a proposal. Quietly. Professionally. No drama. Our firm would acquire the business under a holding company, restructure it, and assign new management. I volunteered to oversee it personally. Teresa gave me the green light. The paperwork took weeks. I never saw Trent during that time. He was too busy trying to get a loan he'd never qualify for. The day the transfer finalized, I walked into the restaurant like I was visiting a ghost. Everything was dimmer than I remembered. The leather on the booths was cracked. The Edison bulbs were dusty. A couple of waiters stood near the bar, half bored, half nervous. Trent was at a corner table, surrounded by papers. He was on the phone, arguing with someone. I waited until he hung up. Then I stepped forward. He looked up and squinted. Didn't recognize me at first. I had changed, different hair, confident posture, no apron. "Do you need a table?" he asked without thinking. I smiled. "No," I said, handing him a folder. "I'm here to speak to the manager. Your new boss will see you now." He blinked. "What?" I placed a business card in front of him. Callie Whitmore, managing partner, Sagestone Holdings, formerly the Hawthorne Grill. He stared at it like it was in another language. "You?" he finally said, voice barely audible. "Me," I replied. "The waitress. The one who wouldn't make it." His face turned pale. You could see it, the exact moment he realized just how far I had come, and how far he had fallen. He sat there for a long time. Didn't say a word. Just stared at the card like it might disappear if he blinked hard enough. The silence was delicious. Part of me had imagined this moment 100 different ways. Maybe I'd yell. Maybe I'd throw his own words back in his face. Maybe I'd laugh and walk out the door with a one-liner. But standing there, watching him come to grips with the truth, it was better than anything I'd imagined. Quiet. Heavy. Real. I could feel the weight of every moment he'd looked down on me. Every time he brushed off my ideas. Every night I studied while he poured another drink and fell asleep to the sound of his own ego. "I don't understand," he finally said. How did this happen?" I pulled out the folder and laid it in front of him. Financial statements, restructuring plans, partnership agreements. Everything signed and sealed. This business was failing. You were 3 months behind on rent, your liquor license was on probation, and payroll's been bouncing. The landlord was going to evict you. He looked down at the paperwork, then up at me again. "So, what, you just bought me out?" "Technically, the firm I work for did," I said, folding my arms. "But I facilitated it. I pitched the acquisition. I ran the numbers. I negotiated the terms." He looked like he'd swallowed a fistful of glass. His mouth opened, then closed. For a man who once loved the sound of his own voice, he didn't have much to say now. "You came back just to humiliate me," he finally muttered. "No," I said simply. "I came back to save what you destroyed. This place had potential. You just didn't know how to manage it." There was more I could have said. About how he'd treated his staff like tools, not people. About how he couldn't separate ego from leadership. About the affair he thought I didn't know about. But I didn't. I didn't need to. I gave him two options. Option 1, stay on as a floor manager under my leadership, with reduced responsibilities and no equity. Option 2, walk away, sign the release, and move on. I built this place, he said, almost to himself. No, I said. Pascal built it. The staff built it. You just took the credit. He didn't answer. I left him there with the documents and told him to get back to me in 24 hours. Whether he stayed or left, it didn't matter. The business was mine now. When I walked back out through the dining room, I saw a few of the old waitstaff watching me. One of them, a young woman named Izzy, followed me out the front door. I heard what happened, she said. You really own this place? I nodded. You coming back with a new name? Not yet, I said. First we clean it up. Get the right people back. We start from the inside out. Izzy smiled, the kind of smile you give when you've been surviving, not living. She followed me back in, and we started calling the old team, Pascal, Jasmine from the front desk, even Omar from the bar who left 2 years ago after Trent called him a glorified soda jerk during a dinner rush. They all came back. Within a month, we started transforming the space. We tore down the wine wall Trent insisted on building that blocked the light. Repainted the walls a soft forest green. Got local artwork on the walls. Switched out the stiff menu for something simpler, seasonal, soulful. We renamed the place Sage and Stone. Still elegant, but approachable. Food you could pronounce. Ingredients you could trace. It was the kind of place I always thought Asheville needed, a space built by people who loved food, not just loved being seen eating it. Word got around fast. Locals came back. Tourists started leaving 5-star reviews again. We featured local farms and community gardens. Hosted fundraisers. Pascal created a Tuesday supper club that sold out weeks in advance. As for Trent? He sent back the paperwork the next day. Option 2. He signed it with barely a note. Just a one-line email, I hope it fails without me. That was the last I heard from him directly. But a few months later, I heard he tried to open a food truck in Charlotte. Something trendy and expensive that never got off the ground. He borrowed money from an old investor who now refuses to return his calls. And still, I didn't feel sorry for him. He had every chance to succeed, more than most. What he didn't have was humility. Or gratitude. Or the grit to learn when he was wrong. Sometimes people ask me if I miss him. If I miss the version of my life that almost was. The answer is, no. Because what I have now is something he could never give me, peace. Purpose. And a team that works with me, not for me. There's this moment, every Saturday morning, when I walk through the front doors of Sage and Stone, before the brunch crowd arrives, before the music starts, before Pascal starts clanging in the kitchen, and I stand in the middle of the space and just breathe. It still smells like coffee. But now it also smells like rosemary. Like rising bread. Like possibility. And every now and then, I get customers who remember the old place. They look around and ask what happened. I usually just smile and say, new management. I never tell them the rest. Not unless they ask. But when they do, oh, I tell them everything. About 3 months after the relaunch, I was walking through the dining room after closing when I noticed an envelope tucked under the hostess stand. My name was scribbled across the front in a familiar handwriting I hadn't seen in a long time. For a moment, I stood there staring at it like it might bite me. It was from Trent. There was no stamp, no return address. He must have dropped it off himself. I debated throwing it out. Crumpling it up and tossing it in the recycling bin with the rest of the day's junk. But curiosity wins in moments like that, doesn't it? Inside was a single sheet of paper. I was angry. And embarrassed. I know I didn't deserve any part of what we built. I thought if I left you first, I wouldn't have to watch you leave me. I was wrong. You made this place what it always should have been. I never said thank you. So, thank you. T. No apology. Just that. I folded the letter and put it away in a drawer I almost never open. Not because it meant something deep, but because it reminded me of something I often forget: some people are just not built to admit when they've burned the bridge they were standing on. And still, life goes on. The staff at Sage and Stone had started calling our team the comeback crew. We had a rhythm now. Pascal ran the kitchen with military precision and artistic flair. Jasmine, my front-of-house manager, started organizing monthly wine tastings with a local sommelier. Izzy trained the new hires like she was prepping them for Broadway. Everyone had found their lane. We began collaborating with local farms. Set up a deal with Hickory Nut Gap for all our meat. Got herbs and seasonal greens from a community co-op in Leicester. Even the coffee was roasted just a few blocks away. I think that's what made the biggest difference, not just the food, but the feeling. People came in and felt cared for. Heard. Seen. Like they were part of something, not just customers on a spreadsheet. Funny how that works. Meanwhile, my personal life had grown quiet, and I liked it that way. I wasn't dating, not seriously. A few coffees here and there, but nothing I brought home. Not because I was bitter, but because I was finally whole. I wasn't trying to fill a gap anymore. And then, one afternoon in early fall, we had a private event. A 60th birthday party for a woman named Barb who was celebrating with her adult kids. I was helping Pascal run the food that day, just for fun, to get out of the office. Old habits die hard. I carried out a tray of wild mushroom risotto and started placing bowls at the head table when I heard someone behind me say, "This place is amazing." I turned and came face to face with someone I hadn't seen in almost a decade. Mason Tran. He'd been 2 grades ahead of me in high school. Back then, he was shy, lanky, and always had his nose in a book. Now he was taller, filled out, and dressed in a way that said mountain chic architect. He grinned when he saw me. "Callie Hart," he said. "No way." I blinked. "Mason?" We stood there for a second, laughing awkwardly. Turns out, Mason had moved back to Asheville to help run his family's construction company. He'd been out west for years, doing sustainable building projects in Colorado and Oregon. But when his dad got sick, he came home. We didn't get to talk much that night, but before he left, he handed me his card and said, "If you ever need help with renovations, or just coffee, let me know." I didn't call him right away. But a few weeks later, when we started thinking about expanding into the space next door to add a private dining room, I remembered that card. He showed up with plans, ideas, and a quiet confidence that reminded me of what real partnership should look like. Not flashy. Not loud. Just steady. And he listened. Not just to the business needs, but to the things I didn't even know I needed to say. There were long workdays that turned into longer conversations. Shared takeout on the patio. Quiet check-ins. The kind of slow burn that creeps in when you least expect it, and doesn't try to rush you. He never asked about Trent. I never brought it up. And yet, he seemed to understand all of it. One night, while we were walking the unfinished expansion space with blueprints in hand, I made an offhand comment about how I still sometimes expected Trent to come storming through the front door, angry that the walls were painted something other than his signature charcoal. Mason looked at me and said, "Yeah, well, maybe the door was always meant for you." It was such a simple thing to say. But it stuck. Meanwhile, Sage and Stone kept climbing. We made the top 10 restaurants in Asheville list for the 2nd year in a row. We partnered with a local women's shelter for job training programs. And our Sunday brunches became something of a weekly tradition for half the neighborhood. But not everything was smooth. Right around the start of winter, one of our suppliers dropped out suddenly. A small family farm that had gone under. It was a reminder that no matter how far we'd come, this industry was still fragile. I ended up driving out to meet the owner myself. A woman in her late 60s named Mrs. Weaver, who cried when she handed over the last few crates of root vegetables she had in stock. "We tried," she said. "But the drought this year just wiped us out." I promised her I'd find a way to help. Back at the restaurant, I met with our team and pitched an idea: host a benefit dinner, with all proceeds going to local farms on the edge of closure. Pascal was in immediately. Jasmine too. Within a week, we had a full guest list, silent auction items, and press coverage from a local food blog. It wasn't just about giving back. It was about remembering who we were. Why we did this. Because as much as revenge had gotten me through those first months, it wasn't what kept me going. What did? The people who showed up every day. Who worked their fingers to the bone. Who believed in building something together. And maybe, just maybe, a part of me was finally healing. But life has a way of circling back when you least expect it. One cold evening, just before the benefit dinner, Jasmine came into my office looking weird. She dropped a reservation sheet in front of me. "Do you recognize this name?" I scanned it. My stomach flipped. Trent Whitmore, Party of Two. I looked up. Jasmine raised her eyebrows. "You want me to cancel it?" I didn't answer right away. Instead, I leaned back in my chair, staring at the name like it was written in smoke. He was coming back. Not as an owner. Not as a chef. As a guest. And he was bringing someone. The waitress in me flinched. The boss in me smiled. But the woman I'd become? She was just getting started. I barely slept the night before Trent's reservation. It wasn't nerves, not exactly. It was more like a pressure building up under my ribs, the kind that creeps in when you know life's about to hand you a full circle moment on a silver platter. I didn't tell anyone else on staff about who he was, or what he meant to me. Only Jasmine knew. And she had enough restraint not to make a big thing of it. Though, before the doors opened, she looked at me and said quietly, "We got your back." That was enough. The restaurant was buzzing by 7 p.m. The benefit dinner had drawn a big crowd: locals, reporters, foodies, small business owners. Every table was dressed with fresh-cut eucalyptus, candles in old jam jars, and handwritten menus that listed not just the dishes, but the farms we sourced from. It was our best night of the year. At 7:45 sharp, I saw them walk in. Trent still had that memory posture, though it sagged a little now, like his confidence didn't sit quite as easy on him anymore. He was wearing a navy blazer, the same one he used to call his power jacket. He looked around the room, clearly surprised at the size of the crowd. And next to him, a woman. Younger. Polished. Maybe 10 years his junior. Her smile was tight. The kind of smile women wear when they're trying hard to look impressed. He walked up to the host stand and before the hostess could speak, he said, "Reservation for Whitmore. Party of Two." I watched from the bar. Jasmine, who insisted on handling his table personally, led them to one of the two tops by the window. The same table where he and I once sat the night before the grand opening of the Hawthorne Grill, back when it was still his dream. Now? It was mine. I didn't approach them. Not at first. They were treated like any other guests. No fanfare. No hint that anyone knew who he was. That's what made it better. Trent wasn't the center of attention. No one whispered or stared. People were too busy laughing, drinking, and celebrating a restaurant that had come back from the dead. Pascal sent out a complimentary amuse-bouche, as he did for all benefit night guests. A tiny heirloom carrot tart with a whipped feta mousse. Trent looked at it like he didn't know whether to eat it or critique it. The woman, his date, took a bite and said, "This is incredible." Trent nodded but didn't say anything. By the time their entrees arrived, a rosemary lamb shank for her, pan-seared trout for him, I decided it was time. I walked over, calm and casual, just like I did 100 times a night. "Good evening," I said, stopping beside their table. "Hope everything's to your liking." Trent looked up mid-bite. When his eyes met mine, I saw it. That flicker of disbelief, the quick mental math of wait, is that? The woman beside him smiled politely. Everything's amazing. I nodded. Glad to hear it. We're really proud of tonight's menu. All locally sourced. The trout came in fresh this morning from Sunburst Farms. Trent blinked slowly. You work here? I smiled, not too big, not smug. Just enough. I own it. The woman raised her eyebrows. Really? That's incredible. It's so rare to see a woman-owned restaurant like this. Thanks, I said, turning my gaze back to Trent. It used to be a very different place. We did a full renovation. Took out all the ego. Left the good bones. He didn't say anything. Just set down his fork and dabbed at his mouth like he needed to buy time. Enjoy the rest of your night, I said, turning to leave. But before I could walk away, he cleared his throat. Callie, he said quietly. Can we talk? After? I looked at him for a long moment. And then I said, there's really nothing left to say, Trent. You said it all in that text. His date's eyes widened slightly. She looked between us like a puzzle was starting to click into place. You texted her? She asked. He shifted uncomfortably. It was a long time ago. I looked at her and gave her the same calm smile. 2 years ago, he told me I'd never make it on my own. Said I was just a waitress. Now he's sitting in my restaurant, eating off my menu, served by my staff. Life's funny that way. Her mouth parted slightly. She blinked, then turned back to Trent with a look that could split granite. I didn't need to say anything else. I simply nodded and walked away, letting the silence between them do what words never could. Later that night, after the guests had gone and we were locking up, Pascal came up beside me at the bar. So, he said, polishing a wine glass. That the guy? Yep. Thought he'd be taller. We laughed. Not a cruel laugh. Just the kind that comes when you've made it through the fire and come out the other side stronger than you ever thought you could be. Jasmine joined us, kicked off her heels, and said, You didn't even gloat. I'm impressed. I didn't need to, I said. The room did it for me. In the weeks that followed, the benefit dinner made local headlines. We raised over $30,000 for local farms. 3 of them credited us with helping them survive the winter. Trent never reached out again. I'm not sure what happened with his date, but something tells me that dinner ended with a very awkward car ride home. Sometimes I see him around town. At the grocery store. In passing on the street. He never says anything. Just lowers his eyes and keeps walking. And honestly? That's the best part. Not the silence. Not the victory. But the peace. Because I didn't just prove him wrong. I proved me right. I wasn't just a waitress. I was always more. He just didn't have the vision to see it. But I did. And I built a whole damn empire on it.